And welcome to today's reading of Venu Gita. We're starting chapter 15 called Krishna's Ropes of Love. And this is based on Srimad Bhagavatam 10:21-19. It goes like this. Gagopakar anuvanam nayator udara Venu swanai kalapadaistanu brishsuksakya Aspandanam gatimatam pulukas tarunam niryoga pasha krita lakshana yor vichitram. My dear friends, as Krishna and Balaram pass through the forest with their cowherd friends leading their cows, they carry ropes to bind the cows' rear legs at the time of milking. When Lord Krishna plays on his flute, the sweet music causes the moving living entities to become stunned and the non-moving trees to tremble with ecstasy. These things are certainly very wonderful. So we'll begin. When their afternoon of merriment was completed, and the cows had eaten to their satisfaction, lotus-faced Krishna and his elder brother Balaram decided to return to Nandagaon. Earlier in the day, their parents had sent 2 messengers to inquire of their welfare and encourage their speedy return. Like always, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj were tasting the bitter fruit of their son's separation, an agony which could only be eased by their personal presence. As the original adolescents, the boys were absorbed in play and found difficulty in leaving the exquisite playground of Govardhan Hill. Raja Bihari was very happy when served by his friends, who were as skilled in the many sports of childhood play as they were eager to be with him, and as expert in playing horns, flutes, and venas as they were desirous of pleasing him. Exhibiting their attractive qualities to Govinda and Balaram, the cowherd boys pleased them with a variety of speeches that were as diverse as the waves of the Yamuna and more pleasing than hymns of the Vedas. Keshava and Balaram laughed at their varied talks, repeated topics, nonsense, prattle, contradictory speech, dialogue, beautiful words, lamentations, hidden talks, discourses with omitted syllables, unclear words, rapid speech, meaningless words, blatant lies, complaints such as "you should not have left us for so long," pleasing words, loving rebukes, laughter, praise on the pretext of criticism, critical words, many jokes, secret poetry, riddles, beautifully ornamented words, astonishing poetry, and speaking with compound syllables or compound words. Wow, a lot of different ways of talking between Krishna and the boys, the cowherd boys. While in Suryakund, Madhu Mangal had received some special sweets from Jatila and had concealed them from his friends in a corner of his scarf. Coming to know of his deceit, Haladar, that's Lord Balaram, approached him and said, "Madhu, what have you hidden in that cloth?" Suspicious of Baladev's intentions, Madhu Mangal secured his treasure under his arms and said, "Prasadam of the sun god, of what interest is it to you, dear friend?" Like a white cloud blessing the earth, Balaram, who was dressed in a deep blue dhoti, asked, "Bato, where did you get such things from?" Increasingly fearful, Madhu Mangal replied, "I pleased the hearts of the Brajavasis by performing sacrifices and was rewarded for my Brahminical labors." "Open up and let me see what nectar you have," insisted a smiling Balaram. Sensing some impending doom, Madhu Mangal said with determined greed and concealment, "No, you and your friends are greedy and voracious. Just by glancing at my prasadam, you will become lusty and lose control of your senses." Removing the plow from his shoulder and leaning against its ornate handle, Balaram teased him further and said, "Bato, why are you so greedy? Divide your prasadam among your friends while keeping an honest portion for yourself. After all, the dharma of brahmanas is to give charity after having accepted it." Raising his head and expanding his chest in pride, Madhu Mangal said, "Friend, at this time I have no inclination to offer you this heavenly preparation or partake of it myself. When inspired by the Supreme, I shall attend to the needful." Coming closer and taking him into confidence, Balaram whispered, "The boys are agitated and want to take your prasadam by force. It is better to offer them some and placate their appetites. I do not know what the outcome of their restlessness will be." Madhumangal curled his lips and replied with contempt, "I do not consider your friends to be more important than blades of grass, nor do I think very highly of you, Bala. I am a Brahmana, a god on earth, and you ignorant cowherd boys want to threaten my property, despite the many warnings of the Vedas. Do you not know the power of a celibate Brahmin like me?" Wow. That's how the cowherd boys talk to each other. While Madhumangal spoke, Balaram gave a secret signal, and the cowherd boys humbly surrounded him, submissively begging for some of his prasadam. Adamant and uncompromising, Madhu merely kept his silence and thrust his wealth within his dhoti. Then one boy came from behind and quickly covered his eyes, while another deftly took his prasadam-laden scarf from his belt. While Madhumangal protested, the boys ran hither and thither, looting the prasadam and making a great show of their pleasure. As he began to rant of the unrefined qualities of the gopas, another boy came from behind and opened the back fold of Madhu's dhoti. Turning to tuck it in, another boy drew near to open the front fold. Gosh, not only did they take his sweets, but they're stripping him. Turning to tuck it in, when with both front and back folds in disarray, his belly protruding generously and exerting to cover his exposed portions, Madhumangal was embarrassed, enraged, and incoherent. Led by Subal, many boys launched a frontal assault against Madhu's defense of abusive words, dislodged his turban, loosened his hair knot, and looted his flute and his stick. Oh, they took off his turban and they messed up his hair. Madhumangal laughed, cried, growled, scolded, and cursed the boys. While holding his cloth with one hand, he snatched Krishna's stick from his grasp and began to clumsily run after the boys while cursing them, his face glowing red as a beet. He stole Krishna's stick. When some boys stood their ground, they fought him with sticks until Krishna restrained his friends and lovingly embraced Madhumangala. Gopal returned his stick and flute, replaced his turban at a humorous slant, and retied the dhoti around his rotund belly. Oh, Krishna is so sweet. He put Madhumangal's dhoti back on. Seeing his prasadam entirely consumed, Madhumangal angrily cursed the boys, saying, "You are enjoying the property of a Brahmana and stealing prasadam earned as a consequence of my vast learning and purity. You boys are impure, whimsical, and arrogant. I shall now return to Vraj and inform everyone of your boorish impudence." As Madhumangal was about to leave, Balaram affectionately stopped him. You are the instigator of these boys' sins and their rebellion against the established Shastric order." Pursing his lips, Madhu said, "I will not speak with you until they have atoned for their sins, begged my pardon, and changed their ways." In this way, Sri Govinda played with his friends, surrounded by his cows, moving by the foot of ancient trees, treading the sacred dust of Vraj, and giving joy to all creatures. The divine brothers dived further into the ocean of their loving sports. Then, eager to bring happiness to the people of Vraj, Sri Krishna decided to return to his village. Seeing his cows wandering at a distance, Hari played his flute. Eager to gather them together, Krishna lovingly called his cows by name. Padme, he, Harini, Rangini, Kanjagande, Rambe, he. Absorbed in divine love, the cows approached Govinda to drink his beauty with their eyes, to smell his fragrance with their noses, and to lick his sweetness with their tongues. Although there were thousands of cows surrounding Hari, by the arrangement of Yogamaya, each felt as if she were standing before him. Every cow believed that he scratched her head and caressed her back to the exclusion of all others. While they mooed in joy, Sri Krishna, who was overwhelmed with affection, said, "O mothers, are you satisfied with the sweet grasses and nectarian waters of Govardhan Hill? The day is now over, and we must return to Nandagaon to feed your calves. Surely they must be suffering from great hunger. Let us go." The Gopas carefully separated the lovesick cows and drove them in the direction of Raj. The ringing of their neck bells, their lowing cries, the thundering of their hooves, and the song of the flute, when combined with dust and the cheering of the boys, created a heavenly symphony of sound. Following their group leader, the cows walked on Krishna's right side, and the buffaloes wandered on his left side. They appeared like the stream of the Ganges and the waters of the Yamuna, flowing about a bluish elephant of joy. The dust thrown up by the animals' hooves turned Gopal's restless locks gray. While great yogis sacrificed the world for the dust of his lotus feet, they never conceived of the cow dust which daily covers the hair of the Supreme. Sri Hari walked slowly among the herds, and the nectar of his flute rained on them like a shower from the gray cloud of bliss. There was no road that was not decorated with cowherd boys. There was no cowherd boy who did not engage in play. There was no play without humor, and there was no humor that did not give joy to Krishna. In this way, Govinda moved with his friends, always engaged in play, sometimes singing, always smiling, sometimes playing the flute, always dancing, sometimes hiding, and always absorbed in love. I like that point that the yogis are trying to get the dust of Krishna's lotus feet, but Krishna is covered in the dust of the cows' feet. Shows the position of the cows. That their feet is always, the dust from their feet is always on Krishna's head. So we'll do the next section. This verse continues with the same affectionate gopis who had participated in the two preceding verses. Absorbed in the ocean of Sri Hari's transcendental pastimes, the gopis noticed his departure, and gathering before the windows of the moon tower, they said, Kim cha tatra visharan vilambana karya devis. We must run to Govardhan Hill without a moment's delay. Sri Krishna is now following the cows on the path to Nandagaon. At any minute, he will enter the deep forest of Vrindavan and become invisible to us. Crowding before an ornately carved window, Sri Radhika and her friends happily gazed at the beautiful scene below. Govinda and his cows were moving like liquid streams of nectar, flowing down the slopes of Govardhan Hill to a great river of bliss. That river of happy cows and gopas swelled its tree-lined banks and surged forward in a passionate tide along the road to Maharaj Nanda's palace. The gopis appeared like a vase of many colored flowers decorating the emerald-framed window. Revealing the minds of her friends, one Sakhi said, Kim vaktavyo haridasa varya tvena yat antanamna asya adri pader mahimna. What to speak of the great king of mountains known as Giri Govardhan, who revels in the name Haridasa Varya, and is distinguished from all other creatures by his uncommon glories. In Vrindavan, all living entities, both moving and non-moving, are equally fortunate, for they all serve the pleasure pastimes of Govinda and his friends. I like this. The gopis appeared like a vase of many colored flowers decorating the emerald-framed window. They were all in the window, trying to get a glimpse of Krishna. At that time, Sri Radhika clearly saw Hari manifest before the pathway of her eyes. Full of enthusiasm for the good fortune by which she had achieved the vision of her beloved, Sri Radha said with great excitement, Aho vitram idam! Sakhis, just behold this charming scene, which is truly very wonderful. Describing what she saw with her love-laden eyes, Radhika continued. Now this is the verse. Gagopakar anuvanam nayator udara venu swanai kalapadaistanu pritsu sakya aspandanam gatimatam pulakastarunam niryoga pasha krita lakshanayor vichitram. So this is spoken by Srimati Radharani. My dear friends, as Krishna and Balaram pass through the forest with their cowherd friends, leading their cows, they carry ropes to bind the cows' rear legs at the time of milking. When Lord Krishna plays on his flute, the sweet music causes the moving living entities to become stunned and the non-moving trees to tremble with ecstasy. These things are certainly very wonderful. The cowherd boys are commonly referred to with the word Gopa, but Sri Radha said Gopakaya, to indicate the extraordinary affection, or anukampakam, that Sri Krishna's friends exhibited towards the life of their lives. As it is natural to protect that which is of great value, the affectionate cowherd boys protected Sri Krishna as they wandered through the fields and forests of Raj. Mother Yashoda's supreme ornament is her unalloyed love for Sri Krishna. Under its influence, she remains obsessed with maternal concern and thinks him to be an ordinary child. She worries that in the happiness of boyhood play, he will neglect his meals and become lean and thin. Over and over, she instructs his friends to feed him, quench his thirst, make him rest, and dust his body. When she thought of his tender feet crossing the rough ground of Vrindavan, she became overwhelmed with anxiety and took a vow for his protection. When she thought he would be the target of Kamsa's demonic friends, she instructed the boys to fight or run at defeat. Although he is the shelter of his friends, his cows, and creation, Yashoda beseeched Balaram to care for her Gopal, and thus the cowherd boys are known as Gopakam. Gopayati also means he who is the shelter of all. In this way, the cowherd boys are known as Gopakayar by their affectionate protection of Gopal and by Gopal's affectionate protection of them. Govinda protected his friends from the many vicious demons who threatened their well-being. After all, he saved his friends from the belly of Aghasura, a raging forest fire, the attack of Dhenuka, and the deception of Yomasura, just to name a few. When Mother Yashoda heard that in the space of a few days Sri Krishna was attacked by Vatsasura, Bakasura, and the terrible Aghasura, she became baffled by anxiety. Seeking to secure his safety by all means, with tear-filled eyes and a voice stammering in anxiety, she called together Kalavati, Rohini, the leaders of the Gopas and Gopis, King Rishabhanu and Nanda, as well as the 9 Upanandas, the Nandas, the Rishabhanus, and other leaders of Raj. Full of emotion, the mother of Sri Krishna spoke as follows: "O dear friends, please help me. What shall I do? Where shall I go? How will I ever be happy? Day after day, calamities befall my darling son, and there are no adults present to give him protection." Casting an angry glance at the men in that gathering, she said, "First we left Mahavan due to the demon's disturbance, moving all our possessions to Vrindavan forest for shelter. If we leave here, what country is safe for your children and my Gopal?" Little Krishna sat on the floor, playing with his toys, indifferent to the parental concerns swirling around him. Yashoda continued, "All young boys are restless by nature. My boy Krishna, like other boys, wanders far away. On one such occasion, sharp-beaked Bakasura swallowed him whole, and somehow by the grace of Vishnu he was rescued." As she said this, symptoms of fear appeared in Yashoda's limbs, and she continued only with the reassuring touch of Rohini Devi. "Another day, Aghasura swallowed not only my boy, but all the children of our village. When Vatsasura tried to kill Krishna, he died only as a consequence of his own sinful deeds." Wringing her hands in anxiety and wiping her tears with her sari, Yashoda Devi, who was prepared to give her life 1,000,000 times to save Sri Krishna from the slightest danger, cried, "Now I do not allow my boy to play outside or care for the calves, but how long shall I contain him in this way?" Yashoda Devi embraced her darling son and cried like a cow frightened for her newborn calf. His body was as soft as butter, and it melted into her beautiful form, the personified vessel of parental love. Nanda Maharaj was the presiding deity of paternal love. Always absorbed in thoughts of his infant son, he glanced at the weeping Yashoda with compassion, and to console his citizens he said, "O Yashoda, have you not forgotten the words of Gargamuni, who said, 'Your son will meet with many demons, and by the grace of Lord Narayan he shall defeat them and remain victorious'? The words of great Brahmins are always true. We should never doubt that. Rather than lamenting, we should give charity, which has always been and will always be our best source of good fortune and the panacea to dispel all calamities." On behalf of her boy and Sri Balaram, who was loved by Yashoda more than by his own mother, Rohini, the queen of Raj, Yashoda loved Balaram more than Rohini loved him. The queen of Raj gave to the Brahmanas great wealth, many precious jewels, and even her personal ornaments. Magnanimous Nanda gave in charity 10,000 bulls, 100,000 beautiful cows, and 200 baras of grain. Sri Krishna's parents knew no other happiness than him. They daily worried for his safety, and their only assurance lay in giving charity, praying to the family deity, and engaging brahmanas in the recitation of Vedic hymns. The Gopas did not fear the threats of the demons as much as they trembled at the peril of Sri Krishna's separation. To mitigate this catastrophe, Sri Krishna remained hidden in their hearts, Gop, and appeared via the remembrance of his many pastimes known as Bhava Vilas. When the remembrance of Gopal did not satisfy them, he bestowed full mercy upon his friends, Anukampakam, and destroyed the evils of his separation by appearing before them, twirling a lotus flower in his hand and smiling charmingly. Thus Hari, always protected by his friends, thus Hari always protected his friends from the suffering born of his separation. Seen from a distance, the procession of cows and cowherd boys headed by Krishna and Balaram was like a great python making its way from forest to forest, driven by the irresistible desire to swallow the pain of separation consuming Braj's inhabitants. The word Anuvanam suggests that Sri Krishna was passing through the forests and sub-forests of Vrajdam one after another. Why was he, the indwelling guide of all living entities, wandering here and there, appearing in want and in search of something? The answer lies in his insatiable desire for newer exchanges of love. It is this quest which impels Sri Krishna into ever-fresh adventures, while remaining fully satisfied by the reciprocation of his cows, friends, gopis, and loving associates. To lure living entities into his loving network of transcendental pastimes, Sri Krishna takes help from his cunning intermediary, the flute. This instrument is not an impotent agent who merely advertises Krishna's extraordinary association. Its own influence is of sufficient power to reverse the course of nature and cause wonder among living entities. The vibration of the flute, known as Venu Swanai, emits a shower of sweet tones, Kala Padai, which exert their authority over living entities according to their qualification. When the still distant Brajvasis heard the comforting song of the flute, they were reassured that Sri Krishna was returning safe and sound at the end of the day. When the Gopa Balakais heard the flute calling the cows, their names appearing from its low, drawn-out tones, they followed him on the path back to Nandagram. The word Kala also denotes the bija syllable kling, the life of Krishna's conjugal loving attraction. When the gopis saw the great movement of his herds towards Vraj, Sri Krishna reassured them of his future association and called the name of each and every gopi on his flute. Thus, Ga Gopakaya refers to the gopis who watched from the moon tower, as well as the cows and cowherd boys who surrounded him. Srila Sanatana Goswami says that Radhika called the flute Udarakam, very liberal, because by its loud vibration it gave equal happiness to everyone, Sarva Ananda Prada. The cows lowed while following Gopal, the Gopas sang while dancing with their friend, and the gopis sighed, resigned to waiting for his association. In Vrindavan, the authority of the flute cannot be limited to any species, sex, race, or category. Some way or another, whether moving or non-moving, conscious or unconscious, everything is affected by its inconceivable vibration. However, the influence of the Venu does not act equally on all. Sri Radha said, Sakya, for those who are embodied, Tanu Britsu, if their nature is to move, then they will become immovable. Aspandanam Gati Matam. And if by nature they are unmoving, then they will begin to move. Pulakash Tarunam. The moving things are the deer, rivers, clouds, birds, devis, and creatures of the forest. And the immovable things are the vines, trees, stones, mountains, and dust of Raj. When the moving are touched by the deep resonance of Sri Krishna's flute, they become rigid and acquire the stavaram dharma of the non-moving. In this way, the deer become immobile like sculpted statues. The rivers stop flowing to become some solid substance, and the birds, unable to fly, stand silently with outspread wings, like creatures in a bewitched land. The only movement of the immobile is the tears of ecstasy flowing from their eyes, as the mystical song of the flute ultimately delivers the vision of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna, who is possessed of an inconceivably beautiful form, who wanders from tree to tree, sprinkles them with the nectar of his smile, and blesses them with the soothing rays of his glance. Should he stop playing his flute for even a moment, all existence would totter on the brink of total collapse. Such a disaster can be avoided only by the sweet sound of his voice, greeting the living entities, or the honeyed melody of his own self-composed songs, which soothes their quivering hearts. He's saying Krishna either has to play his flute, or speak, or sing. But if Krishna is silent, then everyone gets worried. The non-moving experience a transformation of their natures, and the Jangama Dharma that was possessed by the moving find shelter in the mountains, stones, and trees. The mountains and stones become fluid and begin to melt. The trees spontaneously blossom with flowers and fruits, and the leaves of the vines quiver with ecstasy, and all manner of Vrindavan's foliage shed tears in the form of honey and dew, saturating the air with their harmonic aroma. I think I'm going to stop here. Krishna's ropes of love. Ki Jai. Venu Gita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you for listening, and I will come back tomorrow. Hare Krishna.